So what is anxiety and how do you deal with it and how do you grow through it? I want to distinguish between clinical anxiety and we'll call it more day-to-day anxiety. Clinical anxiety, there are people who have that anxiety or depression even, and they may need a professional like a psychiatrist or a / therapist who will maybe prescribe a medication. I'm not pushing medication necessarily, but there are medications today that don't solve the problem, but they lower the temperature so the anxiety is not as intense. And we all know anxiety creates more anxiety. Anxiety doesn't let you make good decisions. You become impulsive, reckless even. So sometimes you may need that, and you also would need to talk to someone. So I don't want to talk about that, because if you need a professional, you should go to a professional. It's not going to be my few words here. But I want to talk about the anxiety that we have more control over. That's not a chemical imbalance or something chemical or clinical. So I think a good way to put it is this. There's a healthy anxiety even. We'll call it angst, healthy angst. I know the word anxiety sounds terrible, but let me explain. I remember was a guy, he was a cardiologist, a heart doctor, came to one of my classes. And he was a really sweet guy, but he had a very difficult life. Personal and health, he had a lot of issues, challenges. And I always really felt for him. One day he comes to me, he says to me, such a terrible week I've had. Maybe you can do something, intervene, and I'd like to have a peaceful week, just total peace. Now, he had a good sense of humor. So I said to him, so you mean like a flat line? So he said, no, not that peaceful. A flat line in a cardiogram is a sign of death. You don't want a flat line. A heartbeat, a healthy heartbeat looks like a wave, like that, like a wave. There's the contraction, expansion of the heart, like the breath, exhale, inhale. So a flat line means the heart is stopped. So means he's basically saying, and this is the point I want to make, that healthy life is restlessness. That's a healthy life. There's going to be ups and downs. Every heart that beats is contracting and expanding all the time. The journey of life is up and down. When it goes to extremes, if you have an extreme up, it peaks too high or goes down too low, that's when you get into either high levels of anxiety or high levels of depression or resolution. Like, people who are so calm and relaxed and they're never restless, that's also not healthy. They're just sitting, they're not motivated. So you want to always have a certain healthy measure of restlessness and angst, but not one that's so extreme that takes control of your life. So I think it's important to understand that we all need a certain element of longing, seeking, reaching, yearning. If you don't have that, you're not human. And I actually cite a verse in the book of Proverbs. It says, the soul of a human being is a divine flame. It's a flame of God. Look at a flame. A flame never rests. It's always flickering. It's always restless. That's what a soul is like, a restlessness. The body could be the body can become extremely lethargic and almost like dead. You're just sitting around. But the flame is always that spirit. And when you see somebody who's stopped flickering, it's not a good sign. If they lack the sparkle in the eye, whatever the reason, there's something missing. Okay, so it's important to know that the soul is a flickering flame, always restless, and longing is necessary, and longing is always going to create, I don't have it yet. So that's going to create some form of angst. I don't want to call it anxiety. When it spills over to the point that it's so much anxiety, so much tension, and you don't have resolution, that's the problem. So there's actually a mystical concept called tension and resolution. You always need that measure. Tension means you're longing for something, you're seeking something, and then you find it and integrate it. And then you continue climbing. So it's always important to look up and then try to gain and internalize it and then continue climbing. I'll just share a story. There was a story with I bring that in the book, Toward a Meaningful Life, in the chapter on body and soul, that there were children playing on a ladder. And all the children were afraid to climb to the top, except one child. He climbed all the way to the top. So his grandfather, who was watching, said to his grandson, and said, tell me, why were you the only one that had the courage to climb to the top of the ladder? And his answer was brilliant. He said, because when the other children were climbing, they kept looking down. So they saw how high they were. They were afraid to climb higher. When I was climbing, I kept looking up. I saw how low I was, so it motivated me to climb higher. So a healthy, growing human being is always looking up. And when you look up, you always see horizons you haven't conquered yet. So it's a motivator. But there's also going to be a measure of tension, a measure of angst, and that's healthy. So don't confuse, don't think just because you have some anxiety, maybe it can be turned into something that you want something, translate it, what do you want, and now figure out how to get it. Now, when anxiety goes overboard, then you need the other side. You need something to resolve. You need something where you can find peace and calm and say, okay, what is it that I'm anxious about? And let's see if I can resolve it. And again, I'm distinguishing this from clinical or chemical anxiety or depression.